You are going to be in for a treat today. Rick Casali is going to teach you about 3D art, about sculpture, but not only sculpture, but sculpture for painters, something that will be extremely valuable to you. Rick, welcome to day number 251.
Wow, thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure.
You have the distinction of being the first artist after day 250. And so we just wrapped up 250 days of this, and now we're going to work on the next 250.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's a lot. Great.
So tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're going to do today.
Well, I'm here at my private studio in Maryland, near Washington, D.C. And as you can see, it's Northlight Studio. So I'll give you a tour of the studio, maybe talk about how I built this space. And then I'm going to go into some sculptural concepts that relate to portraiture. So I'm a portrait painter mainly, or portrait sculptor mainly, but I started as a painter. So I sort of have a unique, I guess, vantage point, because I began as a painter and then I transitioned to sculpture about 8 years ago professionally. So most of my students are painters, and they want to come learn the form, the anatomy, the planes, the proportions in clay. And so that's mainly, what I offer that's unique. And I'll also talk about some of my my online teaching now in this new age of lockdowns.
Yeah. Well, we have, I have had many great painters tell me that the transformative moment for them, even though many of them had been painting for decades, the transformative moment came from when they started sculpting, because sculpting really helped them see form in a whole different way. And George Carlson, who is one of the great landscape painters of our time, as of course also was a famous sculptor, and he said your work will be completely different once you start sculpting, which is why I have a box of clay and I'm ready to jump in. So I'm eager to learn. I might become one of those online students.
Okay, well, don't be afraid. It's just clay.
Yeah, well, I am afraid. So you're going to help us overcome that. So Rick, we'll be right back with you in just a minute. I'm going to just drop off, make a couple of quick announcements. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Well, welcome to day number 251. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air. We are with Streamline Art. Streamline is the company that owns those magazines, has multiple art instruction video companies. We have art events, conventions, online events, painters events, retreats. We have so much going on. And as a matter of fact, if you want to find out all the things we have going on, you can go to streamlinepublishing.com/everything, and that'll kind of tell you what we've got going on. There's so much. We've got products, newsletters, a TV channel, there's just lots and lots of stuff. So check that out if you're new to us. Also, if you are new to us, we have a free gift for you. It's called 97 Amazing Painting Secrets from the World's Best Artists. It's a DVD or an online video, and it's yours, our gift to you, if you just go to 97tips.com. All right. Well, last night was the deadline for the Plein Air Salon Art Competition, so hope you got yours in. The next deadline will be the end of this month, and so you've got a month to be thinking about it. And with Christmas time, you might as well get that done. Now, we are here every day at 12 noon weekdays, and we are here every day at 3 p.m. weekdays and weekends. You can find us on YouTube or Facebook at Streamline Art Video, and you just hit subscribe, and that way you'll have access to all 251 days of content. And that's 2 programs a day, interviewing artists, getting artists to do demos and things of that nature, and then also samples of the 600 plus art instruction videos that we've created over the years. So that's what you find there. Every day at 3 p.m., as I said, we're doing samples of some of the art instruction videos, about an hour plus interviews. Today we have Daniel Marshall, Cityscapes in Watercolor, and you're going to get a chance to experience a little bit of Dan's teaching and video today at 3 p.m. Just again, go to Facebook or YouTube and search Streamline Art, and you'll find it there. This is a little bit of Dan's work, and you can get a feel for what he does. He's got a couple of videos out with us, so we're going to show you some of that today. All right, now also coming up is Watercolor Live, and that's something we're pretty excited about. I've been an oil painter most of my life. I started out as a kid as a watercolorist, like many of us did. You know, I painted with my mom at the table, and I did watercolor, I did acrylic, and then I kind of changed and became an oil painter and have been doing that most of the last 20 plus years. But I'm realizing that there are limitations to that as well, and that I also don't want to travel as much with oil anymore, or with not just oil, but with heavy gear. There are moments when, you know, last year, in a normal year, I traveled 40 weeks that year. And it's one of the reasons I'm able to do these broadcasts every day, because I'm not traveling this year. But I was out not all week every week, but I was out 40 weeks throughout the year. And so there are times when I'm sitting in a hotel room at night and with nothing to do. I don't want to watch television. I don't want to be online. So I take my watercolors with me. So I'm trying to learn watercolor and get better at it for those moments when I really want to be able to figure this out. So we decided to do Watercolor Live, which is an online virtual event, and it has some of the world's best artists in watercolor. And we're pretty excited about that. And let me just give you some of the names. We have Shuang Li will be teaching. Some of our people are from all over the world, in some cases living all over the world. Shuang Li is from China. Birgit O'Connor, who was a guest yesterday on our in our group. Angus McEwen, and he is in Scotland. And Ian Stewart is going to be teaching from Ireland. Dan Marshall, who you just learned about. Andy Evenson is going to be on. The great Thomas Schaller, Stephen Zhang, Suni Warren, Matthew Bird, Pablo Rubin from Spain, the great Mario Robinson, Lauren McCracken, incredible still life artist, Keiko Tanabe from Japan, Joseph Zbukvich. Also, we have John Salminen. I got it right finally. John Salminen. I've been messing that name up, John. I'm so sorry. We have Gene Peterson, Kim Minichello, Brenda Swenson, Michael Holter, and we talked about Angus, and Linda Daly Baker. So that is Watercolor Live, and you can find it at watercolorlive.com. And we've just added, get this, Larry Moore. Larry Moore is going to be teaching in gouache, and I think that's something you're going to want to see as well. So this is watercolorlive.com. It's the 28th through 30th of January, with Beginner Day on the 27th. And if you want to learn watercolor from the start, you want to get to Beginner Day. And that's, even if you just do that day, you'll find it very helpful. If you get in before the 6th, which is coming right around the corner, you're going to save $100. Go ahead and get registered. We're well over 700, almost 800 people registered now, and people from 30, 40 countries around the world. So make sure you get registered at watercolorlive.com. Okay, so I think I've gotten through most of my announcements. I do have some prizes. We have, yesterday we gave away winners a VIP ticket to Watercolor Live to Deanna Levesque-Neal from New Hampshire and Kristen Nagel from Norway. So congratulations to them. Today, we are giving away a digital subscription to Plein Air Magazine. I just got my Plein Air Magazine in the mail. And this is, if you enter Plein Air Salon and you win, you get to be on the cover. And this is Dave Santianos, who's the winner on the cover of Plein Air Magazine. But it's filled with lots of great articles about outdoor painting. And we even had the guide. Let's see if I have one here. This particular issue has the ultimate guide to painting events and organizations. And so it's filled with all the events and a lot of the different things that are going on in the painting world, and the competitions and so on. and you're going to love that. So that's the current issue. You can find the current issue at Barnes & Noble. We're the #1 selling art magazine nationally at Barnes & Noble, and also we're now in Michael's stores. So thank you for making that happen. All right, so now what I want to do is just to show you a little bit of Rick's work before we go back to Rick, just to give you a sense of his ability as a sculptor, so that you can see just incredible work. I've been following him on social media, and that's how I discovered him. And now I'm going to share him with you, but has absolutely incredible work. I told him this morning when we were chatting that his work reminded me of St. Gaudens, very, very classical approach to things. And so please welcome back Rick Casali. Okay, looks like we're in the studio.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick studio tour.
All right.
So this structure was originally a 2-car garage. So
Really?
I kept the old concrete and just tore everything else down. And then we built up. So the wall with the north light windows is 20 feet tall. And that's really key. A lot of people build studios and they have plenty of money, but they don't have the right design. So it doesn't necessarily take more money. It just takes, a good design. And what's really key is to get those windows as high as you can.
Now, is that true for sculpting as well, or is that for painting, or is that only for sculpting?
I'd say for both. And if you're a sculptor, you could do a skylight studio. Admittedly, my studio is a little more like a painting studio because the windows are vertical. So the light is going to come in, from the side and rake across. But I block off those lower windows, and it trickles down from the top pretty much. But yeah, just get them up as high as you can. That's all I can say. And get it north or northeast facing. It's a very ambient light. You can see I don't have to turn the lights on during the day.
Yeah.
I have my big barn doors here in case I need to move large pieces in and out of the studio. So
how large will you sculpt?
Well, this is 12 feet tall, so I'm limited to that in this studio. But I didn't want to be limited to a regular sized door. So anyway, I got that idea from Daniel Chester French, his studio. Here's some of my paintings, actually. So again, I started as a portrait painter, indoor and outdoor portraits.
Very nice.
Here's some of my portrait sculptures in plaster and resin and terracotta.
Now let's talk about that.
Yeah.
The differences between the various things that you would sculpt in plaster, resin, terracotta, etc. What's the pros and cons of each of those?
Well, for me, I mainly sculpt everything in clay first. And then it'll either be fired in a kiln, like a terracotta, or if it's a plastiline head, I'll make a mold of it and then have it reproduced into plaster or bronze, or this is a resin cast. So I mainly do it through mold making, not through firing, but sometimes I fire a few pieces here and there. And I'm not really a stone carver. I don't carve. So my pieces are made in clay.
You say clay, but there's different kinds of clay. I've learned since I've started sculpting, there's that you use oil clay.
I generally do. And this is oil clay here. This is a little sculpture of my daughter. And you can see this clay, it never dries out. So it can just sit here, and until I'm done, it'll be there ready to get molded later.
So you say it never dries out, but I don't mean to challenge you on that, but I had done a small piece and it was a small, thin piece, and it got very brittle over time. Is there a point at which it does dry?
Sometimes it can crack and the oil can ooze away from the, the solid mass of the plastiline, but you can usually heat it up and reconstitute it with more oil. I would say that it usually takes 10 years for it to start to
really
maybe separate, but it depends. There's a lot of different oil-based clays out there, so I don't know.
Do you have a particular preference that you use?
Yeah, I have a variety of clays. Here's a piece I'm working on, and she's done in the Roma Plastilina #1. And I know Roma has sulfur. A lot of artists don't like the sulfur, but I find that it's really kind of creamy and easy to work with. So I usually recommend that to my students because I don't want them to have to heat it up too much. So she's
So typically, you still have to heat up clay a little bit to sculpt, right?
well, especially in the wintertime, you know. So the warmer it is, the softer it is. So I usually put my clay on top of my wood stove here. I have these pans, you know, where I heat it up. Now in the summertime, you just put it outside in your car, and it'll get really soft. So I have Roma, I have Chavant clays, clean clay is a clay I really like. Here's a different type of plastiline. You can see they're all different colors. That's JMac, sulfur-free. These are some demos I'm doing for my Patreon page, little structural figures. And then there it is again. That's the JMac. So it looks like terracotta, but it's actually oil-based.
Now, when you sculpt a head like that, what do you put it on? I've heard so many different stories. I've heard people say you can just kind of wad up some newspaper and build around that. I've heard people say that you need a wire infrastructure. What typically do you do?
Yeah, I would definitely have some kind of pipe. I mean, this one has a threaded rod inside of it. It's not a very big sculpture, so it didn't need a lot. Others I use, plumbing pipe.
But do you have to have? Is it just a pipe, or do you have to create something that creates the shape of a head?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll have wire on top of the pipe.
Now, somebody told me to do this. What I did is I took a pipe and then I took a wig head. And somebody said you can take a wig head and put clay over that. It doesn't seem very. Seems like it's going to be awkward, but I did build it. I don't know if I'm going to use it.
Yeah, I'd say with that, just make sure it's really lean, really small, because you don't want to run into that foam. You know, and that's where I prefer to have more clay than filler. Although when you get into bigger sculptures, you do need to use foam because the weight is so massive. Like her drapery down here, you know, I have foam in there to keep it lighter because otherwise it's too much.
I see.
Yeah, it's too heavy. So,
okay.
But you can see my pipe in the back. That leads to a wire skeleton that holds her up. So she's really dependent on that pipe for support.
Right. And then the wire skeleton, I assume, goes down into the arms and so on.
Yep. Every finger has a little wire inside it. So I like my clay soft, but you have to support it with something.
All right. Terrific.
So I don't know anything else about the studio. I've got shelving to store stuff. As a sculptor, you just need more strong shelves than normal. And then my wood stove, this is my main heat source. And I find that that's plenty in this space. This space is 28 by 28 feet. So I just have that. And then I have an air conditioner through the wall.
Uh-huh.
Sure. A lot of people ask about that.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about this. We'll go ahead and let you get rolling on what you're going to teach us today.
Okay. All right, let me get this closer. So here I have my newest planes of the head. And I know some of you have seen planes of the heads, you know, for purchase online. And I've done several of these. Whenever I teach a workshop, I do another one. This one I started for the Portrait Society of America. And I think what I'm going to do is perfect it and then cast it. So on my website, I have it for sale, precast special. If you order before December 15th, you save $50. So it's just rickcasali.com/planeshead. And what I'm going to do is explain briefly what I put here and why I put it here. So let me grab my calipers. Try to get this closer for you. Whoops. Everything's backwards. All right, here we go. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, so one of the main things I see in portrait painters and sculptors that they miss is simply getting the whole of the head, understanding the entirety of the head, the front of the face and the back of the head. So, you know, one of the things you notice when you pick up a skull is just the flare, you know, from the chin to the what's called the parietal eminence up here. So make sure you get that flare, and it's like every drawing book, they put an egg shape, a chicken egg.
Yeah.
And that might seem elementary, but I can't tell you how many times I see sculptures where there's not enough width at the top of the head. So just think formally, as human beings, we have a big brain and we have a delicate face. And that's different from other mammals. So that's kind of the essence of who we are. So make sure you get that nice egg shape and put it on a nice, healthy cylinder. So then remember the neck, before you get into all these little muscles, the neck is just a cylinder. So in this planes of the head, I've kept one side very geometric, and the other side is going to be more organic. You can kind of see those smaller, fleshy forms. So we'll get up close here. And usually fleshy forms are what gets you into trouble.
Okay.
So you can learn all the anatomy in the world, but if you don't have an understanding of the geometry of the head, then you're not going to know how to organize it into something useful. So that's why I'm leaving this side very geometric. Let's see. All right, I'm getting used to this program.
Yeah, everything's backwards.
Yeah, everything's backwards. So just think of geometry as the great organizer of the anatomy. And that's why Greek sculpture looks so soundly created, because it's very geometric and it's very mathematical. So I would say, you know, the main thing in a portrait is the action. You know, what's the pose? So if you're sketching in charcoal, you might just draw a vertical line, maybe with a curve to it. You know, certainly with this figure, I want to draw a really long line from the head down to the toe. And with a portrait, it's the same thing. You know, you have to think about what's the direction of the form. So that would be the main event, as my teacher, Cedric Egley, calls it. The main event is that he's a vertical. So that's just action or pose. And the next thing I'd say is, what's the proportion of that form? And the proportion is the height to width. So when I talked about, you know, this being the widest point of the head, you know, you want to make those comparative measurements. And proportions will also help you organize the gross anatomy.
So will you actually hold those calipers up to your model?
Oh yeah. When I'm doing something life-size, you know, just go directly up to them and get that measurement. So a lot of you probably measure from the inside corner of the eye to the chin. You know, I can do that directly with these and then make a mark on the clay. And that's going to give me my halfway point for the head. So proportions are really important. That's going to tell you male or female. It's going to tell you age. It's going to tell you lifestyle, body type, all those things, height to width. So as a portrait artist, proportions really give you a lot of the likeness. You know, it's not everything, but, you know, if you can get the eyes, nose, and mouth in the right spot, it's going to kind of look like the person. But then you also have to get the back of the head in the right spot in relation to the front of the head, you know. So that's some of the things I like to teach. So you have action, proportion, and then you have your gross anatomy, which is all the muscles, the bones, the tendons, the ligaments. And those things are sort of seductive because they're fun to learn and they're important. But again, if you don't have a system to organize them, it's just a mess. So what really helps to organize all the gross anatomy is the proportions and the geometry. And I'd say one more thing would be the linear rhythms. So if you can let your eye flow from like let's say the front of the head to the back of the head into the chest, maybe up the front of the neck to the downward plane of the brow ridge. Again, like this figure. The only way to get things in the right spot is to move your eye in long patterns to see the relationships.
Stephen Assail always talks about that is creating a flow line through the design of your figure.
Yeah, we call it a line of action, and it's something John Ebersberger taught me in high school when he would show me cartoons. Now every cartoon has a line of action to tell the story. Is the little mouse jumping forward or being punched backwards? So it's those big things that are really important, and that's what's going to make your work great. So if you don't have the big stuff correct, nobody's going to want to walk up to your piece to look at the little stuff. And I think little stuff is very dazzling up close, so it gets a lot of attention. But again, you want to be. One story that comes to mind is I was in the National Gallery with my teacher, Cedric Egley, and there's Thomas Eakins paintings on one wall, and then there's Sargent paintings on another wall in the same room. And it's almost not fair, but he was explaining to me, that he said he didn't think about it. He just said, it looks like the Eakins clients have been sitting there for 3 hours, whereas the Sargent clients look like they just sat down and said hello. So there was a freshness to the Sargents. And he equated that to, the overall geometry and the expression of the figure from the ground up, as well as the pink coloration to the cheeks and everything else. But it just looked like Sargent was talking to his models, whereas Eakins was kind of approaching them like a still life. So anyway, I want to get off on a tangent on that, but.
Well, I think your point about the basics is really true in painting as well. It's if you're doing a landscape painting or a figure painting, you're really starting out with big shapes or big planes. So it really is very similar, I would think.
Yeah, like what's the main event? Is it the light smacking up against a barn, the big shadow of the tree? So I would start with the biggest thing you can and take that part of the painting very seriously before you get into the smaller things, because all the smaller stuff is dependent on the big statement. So speaking of big statements, in the geometry, you can liken a head to a house. And this is an analogy that's really helped me, that a house has a rooftop, like a dome, has a side plane, it has a frontal facade. I suppose it has an underneath plane at the basement. But what you can see here is the division between the top of the house and the side of the house at the temporal ridge of the skull. So we call this the gutters of the house because it's showing you that division. So in this lighting, the side of the house is in the shade or the halftone, whereas the top is very bright. So every form change is a color change. So what you can do is find that temporal ridge and then continue it right down to the side of the cheek into the chin. And that's a pretty classic plane change. You'll see it in Vanderpool. You'll see it in the Bridgman books, where he's dividing the front of the face from the side along this, I call it the zygomatic major, into the triangularis muscle. But essentially it's the front of your jowl. As we get older, we get a little more front plane there.
How important is it to learn anatomy, learn the names of the muscles? Is that critical?
I think it's important because when you have a name if you catalog the muscles in your head, and when you say the name to yourself, it conjures up a certain shape, a certain muscle. But again, you have to have a system to organize it. So as far as gross anatomy, just try to learn like 2 or 3 muscles a week, and it's accumulative. So you don't have to learn it all at once. I mean, it'd be nice if you could just download it into your brain with a memory stick, but you can't.
That's coming. That's coming.
That's spooky.
Google actually says it's possible.
Oh, wow. So just pick up a few things each week, and you know, if you have to teach anatomy, that's really how you learn it, because you have to actually explain it to people. So I'm still learning little muscles that I didn't know about, but there's some big ones in the artistic anatomy realm. So that temporal ridge is a good landmark. You know, this side plane roughly follows the zygomaticus major. This smaller one will follow zygomaticus minor. And then if I squeak this over into the light more, this will be the front of your masseter muscle, that chewing muscle on the side of your jaw. So you can see how the planes relate to those landmarks. I would think about the center of the face like the keel of a boat, and that's a phrase I'm stealing from my teacher Cedric. But you know, his father was a portrait artist, but he also built wooden sailing boats, and he was very sculptural in his thinking. So his father Bjorn Egli really influenced Cedric's ways of thinking. But Cedric would say to me that the center of the face is like the keel of a boat if you put it down in the water. So there's a ridge in the middle, which obviously is the nose, but also the projection of the teeth. So, you know, when you do a nose, think of it in planes, having a nice, healthy side plane, a skinny front plane, and a corresponding side plane there. A very intense undercut underneath the nose. So if you want to think about which planes are up and down, you know, I call these the undercuts. The eye sockets, they're not strictly under, but they're under enough that they're smoky. You just want to think about your eyes being shaded. Under the nose, you get that nice shadow. Upper lip, usually darker than the lower lip because it's going under. And then certainly underneath the bottom lip, you'll get a nice shadow and the jawline. So that's another way to break down the head. There's all kinds of ways to break it down. But that would be up planes and downward facing planes. I just call them undercuts, because if you're doing a painting, you mix up your shadow color and you hit those undercuts, and you're going to have, it'll kind of look like a skull, you know? And if you can get sort of those shapes the right size and in the right spot, it's going to look like somebody's skull, and it'll look like them from a distance. And that's
so what is the key to getting likeness?
Well, I'd say mostly proportions. Beyond that, I would look at how people move, how they tend to sit, how they tend to stand, and that's going to determine how you pose them in your portraits. So, you know, you don't want to pose a very active person crumpled up on a couch. You want to show them who they are. So you might want them standing, looking very alert. If someone's they kind of have loose joints and they like to lounge around, well, maybe they're the type you want to drape over a couch. So I think the way you pose people is important. Also, the way you light them, the way you let the light fall across their forms will either highlight their forms or it'll obscure their forms, depending on how you do it. So I think lighting is important. Posing, finding the right chair if they're going to sit, finding the right clothing. Definitely.
So how close, if you were working with a model
Yeah.
and doing a portrait like this, where would you be? Where would the model be? They'd be right there beside you?
Yeah, they'd be right next to the head, and then I'd be running far away to look at both of them, and then running up and doing something, and then running back.
Like sight size.
Pretty much, yeah. But again, staying very active and stepping back a lot. I mean, I'm talking every every 15 seconds, maybe step back.
And so when you're turning, let's say you're turning your turnstile there, so you can see the side.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that with the model? Do you walk off to the side of the model and look, and then turn that, or do you turn the model?
If I'm by myself, I'll oftentimes wheel my stand around the studio. If I'm in a class, we'll have the model actually turn, and then everyone turns their Lazy Susan. But I will have the model move around the studio too, because I want to see, if one side's in the shadow for an hour, I want to flip that around and see it in the light,
Right.
So I have the model move a lot, and actually I like that because it keeps them fresh, and I get to know them and see how they move. So if they've been sitting too long, have them stand up and just work standing. They like that, So stay very active. Don't get crunched up in your chair too much. They always say draw from your shoulder, not your wrist.
Right.
So this side, just to summarize, what this is an explanation of geometric planes in the way a painter would think, in the spirit of John Vanderpool or George Bridgman. So in this case, I'm cruising over the form in large shapes on top of the form. So if you do your light and shade, that's what you want to do. Now on this side, I'm thinking in elevations. I'm thinking through the forms, underneath, above. And I'm bringing in some of these more organic, fleshy forms. So I'd say it's better to learn this first before you get to this.
So what's the learning process like? If you were going to recommend somebody going from the beginning, would it be with drawing first? Would it be plaster cast and copying cast? What's your process?
I would say, drawing is kind of the core of everything, in the sense that drawing is making form. For me, my training was lots of figure drawing and portrait drawing and charcoal, vine charcoal from life. And then I would do pencil sketches from photographs at night, pencil sketches from fine art books, art teaching books like Bridgman and Vanderpool. I'd copy Sargent heads in pencil. And I think cast drawing is good because you have it like a still life you can render the form from. So it's a good way to learn light and shade and perhaps anatomy as well. But working from life is important because we're not statues, we move. So you have to, you got to move with the model, and your brain has to move just as quickly as them too. So in life drawing, you're not copying so much as you're reconstructing the person on the fly. It's a very active thing. So that demands that you learn about the rib cage shape, that shape of the head, the neck's the cylinder. You really want to feel the structure of the bones. And in that sense, you're not a slave to copying. You're sort of liberated through your knowledge of form. So I think working from life is tremendous. Do still life, do landscape, and then in the wintertime, do some sculpting. Try doing a head in clay. Just get some cheap terracotta clay. But it'll be accumulative. I remember when I was studying with Steve Perkins, we would do about, I think, a month out of the year with Steve, and we do a figure in the morning and a head in the afternoon, 5 days a week for a month. And I did that probably 5 or 6 years. And that was a way to actually learn the anatomy and the planes. But it's endless. I'm still learning. So I'd say do a combination of all of it. And finally, get into oil painting, because painting will show you how to do the massing of the planes. So, your drawing helps your painting, but your painting also helps your sculpting. And your sculpting helps your drawing. So it's kind of a cycle. But if you get really good at painting, massing in light and shade, Well, that's going to make you a better sculptor because all of a sudden you can spot those planes and colors very quickly. So it's all interconnected if you're creating form. Now, if you're just copying stuff, it doesn't really matter what you do, I guess. But if you're interested in reconstructing reality and boiling it down to its essence, which I think is what the great masters did, then each discipline helps the other.
Kind of hard to do a self-portrait in clay, isn't it? Because you can't see the back of your head.
Well, I've done it. I looked in a mirror to do this one, but then I had a friend take some pictures from the side of me. This is just the front of it.
Right.
But you can do it. Yeah. I mean, I'd say if you don't have a model, especially nowadays, use yourself. Look in the mirror, and it's kind of neat.
Do you ever do plaster casts of anyone?
Oh, you mean life casts?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 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 So, like for this thing I'm working on behind me, I did a number of hands and feet as a reference for her, and I have pictures of that model.
This is the cast of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think I got this at the Chesterfield.
Oh, Chesterwood.
Chesterwood. It's hard. This camera distorts, but this was essentially done when he died, and so I think it's pretty cool. But I've been thinking about doing plaster casts of other people just so I can learn how that works, and then maybe try to sculpt from those, because getting live models isn't necessarily easy.
Yeah. Yeah, they make some really neat products now. There's alginate, and there's something called double body silk, I think it's called. It's a I guess it's non-toxic latex or something, but you just drip it on someone's face and then you peel it off. So that can be kind of fun, especially for learning those smaller forms. One thing I'll mention though, when you make a life cast of someone laying back, it's really going to pull their forms back a little bit. So they're not going to look exactly the way they look when they're standing up. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And again, with the neck, I've added musculature in more of an écorché style. The main muscle people get attracted to is the sternocleidomastoid muscles. So I've tried to put those on without disrupting the cylinder of the neck too much. And there's a few others, the trapezius in the back, the clavicles down here create like a shelf. There's some smaller muscles. So my plan is to make a little cheat sheet for this that will be shipped out with the plane's head. I do have a finished ear. With ears, just learn the cartilage of the ear completely, and you can pretty much make an ear out of your head once you learn the parts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll show the website, which I looked it up on your website, and it's rickcasali.com/store/planeshead.
Oh, that's it. Right. Good.
Yeah. So if you go to rickcasali.com and just go to the store, you can find it.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. And also,
absolutely. Well, we're trying to help everybody during COVID times, and we hope people will buy stuff because it's good for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to adjust. When I realized this lockdown wasn't ending, I just decided got to be totally, self-sufficient as much as possible. You can't really rely on any school or anything. So I'm doing my Patreon page now, where I have lots of teaching videos on these concepts, and it's only $10 a month. So that's patreon.com/Rick Casali, my name. And you can just try it out. I do about 4 videos a month. I only promise 2, but I usually do 4 or 5. And right now we're doing the whole figure. So I'm doing the entire rib cage, pelvis, head, appendages, hands and feet. That'll probably go into March or April. And then I have a workshop coming up that's sold out in person, but you can take it virtually through the Zoom app. And that's January 6th through 10th, I believe. Um, and you just go to my website, rickcasali.com/classes, and that'll give you that figure workshop link.
Yeah, terrific. Well, I would highly recommend it to anybody, any painter who wants to learn to do better portraiture, better figures. I think it's going to inform your work. And quite frankly, I think even it would inform your work if you're a landscape artist. And plus you'll have something fun. You'll be learning something new.
Yeah, they say if you can sculpt a figure, you can do anything, you know?
So there's the great debate, right? Which is more difficult?
Painting or sculpture?
Yeah,
I'd say, anything done well is difficult, but
that's true.
with a painting, the added difficulty I see is you have to learn the language of color, because you're creating the illusion of three-dimensional form on a 2D plane. In sculpture, it's more direct. You're actually making the form, but then you got to worry about it falling over. You got to not just sculpt the face, but you got to sculpt the little pinky toe. So you're doing a 360 painting all of a sudden. So sculpture can be a lot more time consuming, I think. Not always, but I think you know what I'm saying. I think.
Do you have anything in the studio that's at a very early beginning stage so that we can get a feel for clay massed in on something?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I'll tell you, this head I just kind of started. I mean, it's a small head, so I could work quickly. But that's pretty much the skull shape. Maybe that's further along than you'd want. Here's a little.
Well, try to get an understanding of what.
Here's a little sketch of a boy. You can see it's kind of rough. Now, when I'm teaching, I'll really boil it down to its fundamental form. So this is how I'm teaching them the whole body, sort of a mannequin-like approach. And
you got a lot of different things going on at one time, don't you?
Yeah, this is from my leg lesson on Patreon. And this was a demo from a recent workshop where I'm explaining the arm.
Now look to the right there, just a second. Right there. What's that? Mass of clay?
So this is, you asked about armature. This is clay on a wire armature for a head. So I'm tearing that down to use it for my big figure over here. This is the small figure I did in preparation for this larger one. And she's called the Dreamer.
Once you've done something in the oil clay, do you keep it forever, or once you've done your cast, you reuse the clay?
No, once your cast is done, then you tear it down.
Oh, what a disaster.
Yeah, that's somewhat liberating.
And do you make your own plaster casts, or do you send them out?
I do my own casting a lot, but because I started as a painter, I never really learned to make my own molds. I know the principles involved, but I don't really trust myself. So I do contract my mold making out to other sculptors. And bronze casting, I have to contract that out to a bronze foundry because I can't pour bronze here. But I pour plaster here and I pour resin in the studio.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much to learn. It's fascinating.
Great. Well, I'm happy to share it with everybody.
Well, I've really enjoyed this today. It's something that those of us who are painters don't think about. And I'll tell you what got me excited about 3D is I've got a friend by the name of Richard Taylor who runs a company called Weta Workshop in New Zealand. I took a group of artists to New Zealand to meet there. They did, Lord of the Rings, and they, hundreds of films, and they do a lot of the costumes and a lot of the molding. And anyway, he has a team of sculptors who do nothing but sculpt for masks for the movies and things of that nature. And so he decided he needed to keep them busy during times when most movie companies lay people off, and he wanted to make sure he kept his people employed. So he would have them sculpt things for their own joy, and pay them while they were while they were not working on any other projects. And
Uh,
then he built a sculpture garden outside of Wellington, which he took me to as a guest. So he's got this massive, probably 30-acre property filled with unbelievably beautiful sculptures. It's all private. He once in a while he'll do a fundraiser or something there, and you'll see, you know, sculptures from Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or some of the other films. It's mostly fantasy sculpture, and it just got me so excited about it. And then he took me into his studio where he does sculpting and kind of showed me the ropes and got me excited. So that's one of the reasons I'm pursuing this now.
wow. Yeah. I mean, a lot of my students are in special effects, or they make video games. You know, they sculpt everything on the computer. So I really like those students because their livelihood depends on learning this stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
that means you've got to be good.
it's more immediate. You know, it's more intense.
Yeah. So, are you mostly doing commission work? Are you doing things that you sell in galleries? How do you make your income?
Yeah.
Teaching?
Yeah, all the above. I mean, I have small pieces that I sell in galleries locally, um, and in Provincetown, Massachusetts. Um, and then I have bigger commissions that are more long term, like this figure. And she has a sister to her who's being molded right now. So they're both going to be bronzed. Um, so commissions like that, and also portrait commissions. I'm actually about to do 3 portrait paintings in the new year. So I will be back painting. And then I do teaching. You know, teaching is usually about 30% to 40% of my income.
Hmm.
It's surprising sometimes how much it is. But now I'm teaching online, so that's good. And
Well, I'll encourage everybody to go to your website, rickcasali.com, and check out. You've got a store there. You can get. Would you say you've got a special on the Planes of the Head
yeah,
precast?
if you order by December 15th, you'll save $50, and I'll give you free shipping to the U.S. mainland. So
Well,
I call that the precast special, because you're buying it before it's molded.
yeah. Well, it's going to get done.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll put my order in today.
Okay.
All
Hey,
right.
appreciate it.
Yeah, so we got by the end of the day, we'll have 10, 12,000 people who have seen this on different platforms. So hopefully we'll help you sell a couple of those.
Ah, well, very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, well, be grateful if it works. Well, Rick, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate you taking the time and showing us a little bit. Where is there a place that is a kind of a place where people buy sculpting clays and tools? It's kind of a resource.
Oh yeah. So I really like Sculpture House. They're in Florida, sculpturehouse.com, and also the Complete Sculptor in New York City. I use them a lot. That's where I send my students for tools, clay, mold making materials. So they're
And
both they're
is
both.
there a good source for plaster cast? I know it looked like you had a few of those around.
Oh yeah. I like Juiced Gallery in Boston. They're I think in Woburn, Massachusetts. So some of these are from Juiced. Also, Felice Calci, he's in Italy. I think his name's Andrea Calci. You can look him up on Instagram, Felice, and he's got a lot of good stuff. Um, who else? I think those are the 2 that are really high quality. You know, I've got some of these are mine and some of these are antique, but there's a Henry Henchy drawing right there.
Oh, wow.
Those are both Henry Henchys.
Fabulous.
This is a painting by my teacher, Cedric, from the 70s. And that's a painting by Michael Shea Neal of me
Oh, fabulous.
a few years ago. So, so it's little things that inspire me. And
Yeah, Michael was a tragic loss. That was so sad.
oh, I'm sorry, Michael Shea Neal. Who are you talking about?
Michael Shane Neal.
Say it again. Sorry.
Michael Shane Neal.
Oh, he's still alive.
Oh, I don't think
Oh,
so.
you're talking about his teacher, Kinsler. Maybe.
No, Michael passed away too. Pretty sure. Just recently.
No.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, Kinsler passed away, and then he passed away last year. I'm pretty sure. I may be wrong. People will correct
Oh,
me.
maybe Ed Jonas, maybe. So,
Nope, nope, nope.
well, I just texted him.
Oh, did you really? Okay. Well, this is going to be controversial.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll find out if you get a
I hope
response.
he's still alive.
We'll find out if you get a response.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rick, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it. And everybody go to rickcasali.com, check it out. And we've learned a lot. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Terrific. Well, hopefully I am wrong about Michael, but we'll find out. Okay, so thanks for tuning in today. Again, a reminder that Watercolor Live's deadline is December 6th. I've got close to 750 people signed up so far from all around the world, instructors from all around the world. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's 4 days, and I'll be hosting it along with Kelly Kane, the editor of Watercolor, American Watercolor. And it's going to be terrific. We put it at the end of January so you can kind of get through all the holidays and everything that goes along with that. And if you can't watch live, you can get the replays, and there's different levels of replays. Just check it out. That's watercolorlive.com. Thanks for being here today. This is day number 251. Our guest was Rick Casali. Thumbs up and applause for Rick. And check out his website, rickcasali.com, and his Planes of the Head and his teaching and other things. We all want to help one another through these times. We've got to keep artists thriving and make sure that they're able to survive, because without them, our world would not be a good place. And none of us who are artists want to go back to work in jobs that we don't love. I happen to love my job, so I'm cool. So thank you again, and we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazine. Thanks. Bye-bye.